Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. James Hicks here from Hicks Do Media and Infotainment News. I am joined today, Perspectives in Focus, by, I would call you the man of the hour, but you are maybe the man of the half hour because we have an individual sitting in the green room who is incredibly special. I would just third person looking in, right? Incredibly special, fantastic history, true American hero who you have an intimate relationship and knowledge of.
Yes,
Am I kind of rounding out there to say the right things there?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so we have a phenomenal person that's about to come on, and General Cole has been a integral figure in my life, and we had a very interesting compounding relationship at the early part of my military career. Whereas, aside from all the things that he and I did together, it was amazing for me to be able to learn from him, to look up to him. Just a man of God, a phenomenal husband, father, military man, Rotarian, former boxer. We probably won't get into talking about him and his boxing career, but there's always a phenomenal story that comes with it. Heck, you might touch on it later, but he was the first man to actually lead round the world trip nonstop that included a bomb drop. He was the leader of all of that happening, and I've been lucky to have plenty of occasions for him to give me feedback, input, or just tell him, you know what, I'm just going to sit back here and you do your thing, and yeah, so we're in for a treat.
Awesome, awesome. I think you left one out because, first of all, General Cole, thank you for being here, sir. Thank you for your service. And LaMills left one characteristic out. You are an incredibly good storyteller. Listen, before we went live, the nuggets of inspiration and the nuggets of just comedy that you had, like I said, we're going to have to just do this once a week for like forever because I need during this time of lockdown and pandemic and everything that's going on, just need this that spirit that you have. So again, thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
My pleasure. It was my pleasure most of the time.
Most of the time, I love that. I'm going to really again just sit back in awe and wonderment. I'm going to sort of let LaMills really lead the discussion. I will just be the guy, like I was saying, be the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, pulling the curtains and pulling the ropes, just making sure that things go well from that perspective. But again, just thank you again for attending today.
My
Yeah.
pleasure.
So General, I'm going to jump right into it. And first, you know, it's been about 30 years ago that many would have considered like you were one of the most powerful people that we actually had in Barksdale Air Force Base, obviously, but then in the Bossier City area, in the Shreveport greater area. And we can think a lot about the climate of things going on today. Um, but one of the things that stuck out to me was that you chose to send your son and daughter to public schools, that weren't in the most affluent area that you could have chosen to send your kids to public schools that had a very high African American population compared to most of the other schools in the area. Um, Not as good a reputation academically compared to some of the other schools in the area at the time. Um, what guided you to do something like that? What? I mean, because that's not the norm. That's not the norm today. That wasn't the norm 30 years ago. And when I got introduced to your family, that was one of the first things that shocked me was here you are, literally the leader of thousands of people on this Air Force base, the top man. And I was then introduced to your son first, and they said he goes to Russian middle school. And I thought, I think we got it confused. He goes to a different middle school. Um, as a parent, what guided you to make that kind of decision?
Well, in the first place, all the base kids in those days were going to Russian middle school.
Right.
And I retired. Um, the only place we could find that was a decent place to live was in the airline school district. but all
Right.
our kids' friends went from Russian to Bossier High, and I
Yep.
wanted them to stay with their kids, with their friends, with their peers, and
Yep.
that's what we did. So I went to the school board and I said, can I file a request and let my kids stay in Bossier? And they said, oh sure, but you have to provide transportation. So I said, I don't mind doing that. We'll leave them with their peers. So we did, and on the very first day we moved in our brand new house when I retired, I got a letter from the school board saying you can't keep your kids in Bossier. You're going to have to take them out of Bossier High and put them in the airline. And I called the superintendent up and I said, there's a mistake here. You told me that I could keep my kids in Bossier. He said, well, I'll handle the school board. Don't worry about it. And 2 weeks later, he called me back and said, I can't handle the school board. You're going to have to take your kids out of Bossier and put them in the airline high school. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and get a lawyer from Shreveport, and I'm going to take you to court. And the next time we meet is going to be in a court of law because I'm going to keep my kids in Bossier. Do you understand? I don't care what you do to me, but don't hurt my kids.
Right.
And so that's what we did. We kept them in Bossier with their peers, and it worked out great. Susie ended up going into the Air Force on a full Air Force ROTC scholarship, and of course George Payton followed her 1 year later, went to the Air Force Academy. So, and right out of Bossier High, and he and his best friend validated their first year of math at the Air Force Academy right out of Bossier High School. So that it worked out great.
Yes.
But what we're here to do is talk a little bit about you.
Hold on. Now, see, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the guy that we know from behind the curtain, right? I mean, this guy right here.
There are two things that really impressed me when I first met a young airman who happened to be Coach Garrett, Alex Garrett. The first thing that impressed me was that he had volunteered as an airman to take on this responsibility. He did all the coaching, the fundraising, the mentoring. He did all of that on his own and on his own time. He didn't get paid 1 cent for volunteering all this time and effort to teaching these young men. And he acted as a mentor to a lot of them. That brings me to the second thing that impressed me about Coach Garrett. He paid particular attention to a lot of the young men that were having problems growing up. A lot of them had made some bad decisions in life. And Coach Garrett kind of singled them out and nurtured them along and brought them along with the rest of the boys to a point where they could be productive young citizens in our community. And I really, really thank you for what you did there, Coach. You acted as a mentor to some of these kids at a time in their lives that was very, very crucial. And a lot of them didn't have fathers. And you provided that leadership as a young airman. And that really, really was impressive to me. And I could tell that you were going to do well in life for sure with that kind of attitude.
Well, thank you, General. Now, I'm trying to talk about you, and it's so much easier that way. Now, a part of that, what you just described, was obviously I was coaching basketball, and George came to the workout, and we had a great workout. And we were just starting a brand new AAU program. Many people didn't know what AAU was back then, and traveling basketball and all of these pieces. And now, what was it like for you as a dad to actually see your son to then eventually get the opportunity? Now, he's posting his picture up here. Two of those kids on there were NBA players that were top 5 NBA picks in the year 2000. The tallest one there is Stromile Swift, and to the right of, I guess, to Stromile's left with the glasses on is Marcus Fizer. Stromile went to the Vancouver Grizzlies, and Marcus went to the Chicago Bulls, and I got the pleasure of being in Minneapolis when they were drafted and to sitting there and spending a lot of time in Chicago with Marcus. But that aside, George having the opportunity to spend time being coached by me and then Mike Theus, and then spend time on, on the court and learning and all of these things. How did that translate to, let's be honest, now you're a phenomenal person, phenomenal career, and your son is doing very much the same things that you are. What impacts did that have for you as a parent and then on your son?
Well, growing up as a son of an Air Force, of a senior Air Force officer, I knew what it was like for my son, and I think you'll recall I came to you and said I want you to treat him just like you treat everybody else. And as a
Yes.
matter of fact, I said, be a little bit tougher on him if you want to.
Yes.
I don't care because you were he was at a time in his life when he was learning to be a young man, and
Yes, sir.
this basketball team had so many unintended spin-offs that he picked up on. The first thing is he's colorblind. He really is. Some of his best friends are black folks, and he didn't know the difference in those
Right.
days for sure.
Right.
It didn't make any difference, and it still doesn't make any difference. And
Right.
as a young officer in the United States Air Force, that will go a long way toward helping him understand the enlisted people that he has to work with and his fellow officers. And
Right.
so, look, you all in that AAU team were the genesis of everything that he is today, and we're so proud of him today. And you guys, you bear a lot of that responsibility for where he is today, Coach. And we're eternally grateful for what you did.
Now, and thank you. Now, part of what's funny was Mrs. Cole was on there and she brought up the oranges there, and I do remember you making it clear to me that don't give him no breaks. It's like he's getting no breaks, and so I think sometimes George was frustrated with me because he got no breaks. He got no breaks. And, and I was mentioning earlier about I remember I have a drill, whereas I would have the kids toss toss tennis balls instead of basketballs because everyone thinks they know basketball when they come in. I wanted them to learn to throw and catch as basketball players. And that was early on when I first started with the kids because I assumed that everybody knows nothing. All of them think they're basketball stars, but everybody knows nothing. And I had them tossing those balls, and you and I had already had our little chat, and George cracked the joke. And for those who think, well, when I spoke on the basketball court as a coach, I made sure my players understood there was only one voice that was going to be listened to. I'll say it that way. And so George got a quick snapback from me. And I remember after practice him coming to me and saying, "Coach, you're really serious about those tennis balls, aren't you?" and so it set an impression. And so in the back of my head, part of me is wondering, like, I hope he doesn't go home and tell the general that I got on him too hard. And then the other part of me was like, I think I'm in a good place. And so if this tests true, then I'm going to be all right. And so George came back the next practice and he engaged. And then I had volleyballs along with the tennis balls. They didn't get to play with basketballs and they were frustrated with me. And George didn't say a single thing. I said, so I checked in with him, I want to make sure I wasn't going to get some Article 15 or something, when I got back to work myself, that the general was going to get me. And George was like, I checked in with him like, "Hey, are you okay from last practice?" And he was just "Yes, sir, everything's good." I'm like, "You okay with the tennis balls and volleyballs?" "Yes, sir." And he went on about his business. And from there on, it actually took me a bit to make sure I had the confidence that the general wasn't going to get me, and that I truly did have full control of my team, and that those things were going to go well. Now, from the point of view of politics, now we're talking about a lot of things here in terms of basketball and all these other pieces. Now, you've spent a little time near people associated with politics. I think you previously worked for Donald Rumsfeld, or with them, I think it
I worked
was.
with Dick Cheney.
There was Dick Cheney, and you did some advising as well for some people in the past. Now you're not a politician, but you've been close to a lot of those people. Now tell us a little bit about that experience for you.
When I was a young colonel, one of my jobs was to be the chief of the Air Force Senate Liaison Office in Washington. My office was actually in the Russell Building, and in those days, Senator Barry Goldwater was like our patron saint from Arizona, and I was kind of like the librarian. Whenever any senator or staffer had a question regarding the Air Force, they would come to me in my office, and I would link them up with the person in the Pentagon that was the expert. So, like I say, I was kind of like the librarian for the Air Force. I got to travel all over the world with a lot of senators and a lot of staffers, and I got to see a lot of them up close and personal. And I got to tell you, after a year and a half of doing, I walked out of the building along with Senator Barry Goldwater on his last day there. He said, "Where are you going, Pate?" I said, "I'm going down to Fort Worth, Texas to be the wing commander." And he said, "Well, congratulations. Are you happy?" And I said, at one point in my life, I thought I might want to run for elective office. But after a year and a half being next to you guys, that's the last thing I want to do. So he laughed, and we both walked out together. But I don't mind being an advisor, but I certainly didn't want to run for elective office after that. To tell you the truth, Coach.
That.
But I'm glad. But you know what? I was really happy to hear that you were running for the council, because they need somebody at the council level, I think, that's honest and doesn't have an agenda to play. And I think from your experience in the Air Force and what you've done in life, you're a perfect man for that position. And I'm really happy that you're running for it. Okay.
Thank you so much, General. Now that brings me to one piece that I actually get to. This is the first time I get to address this in a public forum with you here, because many people oftentimes ask me about leaving the military. And I explained to them that, yes, I have an honorable discharge. And, they say, "How long were you in the military?" I say 6.5 years. They're like, "Well, that's kind of odd. Usually someone does 4 years or 6 years, but 6.5 usually never comes out of it." I said, "Well, yeah, I kind of left early." And they're like, "Something bad happened?" I'm like, "No, actually something great happened. I left, and I was able to get out early." And they're like, "Well, how'd you get out?" I'm like, "Well, I got a congressional." Like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Well, I wrote a letter to my senator, and I waited about 3 weeks, and I got a phone call from that senator's office, and they told me before anybody else knew that I was going to be getting out of the Air Force, and it was going to take a little while for the paperwork to be processed." And I started dancing, and I was happy. And the reason for that was because, for those who are out there, I applied for a hardship. And at the time, my official job was to make false teeth. But I had set up the computer systems at Barksdale Air Force Base at the dental lab. And Hewlett Packard made a job offer for me. And I applied for the job and tried to get a hardship so I could take that job, which was way better than my enlistment pay. And they said, "You're too important to the mission because you're doing the computer stuff." And I said, "But hold up, that's not my AFSC. That's not my official job. You should let me go. And I have a great chance to go and be a positive in the civilian world." And they said, "Sorry, no." And I came to General Cole and said, "What should I do?" Now, at this time, General Cole was retired. And first you wanted to know what the colonel did. And I told you, I said, the enlisted folk told the colonel that they didn't want him to let me go. And the colonel said, "Well, you can't go." And you said, "Well, that's a good colonel." And I'm like, I'm not liking the way this conversation is going. And then you said, "Well, you need to get you a congressional. You asked me, you have a senator?" I said, "Yes, sir." It's like, "Well, then write them." And you gave me a little coaching on that. And lo and behold, it was Floyd Spence and Strom Thurmond at the time. And I wrote each of them a letter. And Strom Thurmond's office got back to me about 3 weeks or so. They made a phone call to Barksville Air Force Base. And I don't even know how they got the phone number. I don't even remember it was on the letter. And I answered, and the person from his office, I think her name was Allison Miller, I think, or something like that. And she told me, you're going to be getting out of the Air Force. We've gotten your stuff approved, and it's going to be processed, and no one else knows about it right now, but it's on its way. So when I tell that story to people, General, everyone thinks I'm just telling a big whopper of a story. So this is the first time now I need to get this on record for you to validate some of that background for me.
I had a little background on that, in that when I was early on in the Office of the Senate Liaison Office, I escorted Senator Phil Gramm out to Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, and then to Abilene, Texas, to where we accepted the first B-1. And we were flying along with 4 other members of the House. And Senator Gramm had been a House member from Texas, and they were personal friends of his from Texas. So he corralled them all, and we got on the airplane, and it was late, and it was about 8 o'clock at night. So they all fell off asleep, and Congressman Tom DeLay from Sugar Land, who at the time was a whip, was a new guy at the time. I said, there wasn't anything to do, so we were sitting there talking, and I said, Congressman, how do you get your money? And he said, well, let me tell you how that all works. He said, if you're in the Air Force and you have a problem, you write me a letter. And that letter goes immediately to an aide, and he responds to you that says, I thank you very much. I got your letter. I'm working your problem. He said, at the same time, a cover letter goes on your letter, and I send it to the Air Force, Department of the Air Force, and the Pentagon. And I say, this is my good friend, Lieutenant Cole, who has a problem. What can you do to help him? And they've then got 5 working days to get back to me. He said, so when they get back to me, I send that letter, I send another cover letter on that letter back to you. And fixtures, and I say, dear Peyton, dear Lieutenant Cole, I understand you've been, thank you very much for your service, and I understand you've been having some problems with the Air Force. This is what we've done to solve your problem. And you go on your way. Well, 60 days from the day that letter goes out, another letter is automatically generated for my signature. And it says, dear Lieutenant Cole, thank you very much for your service, and I am so proud to have been able to help you 2 months ago. Next fall, and I'm going to need some help from donations from good people like you that I can help even more. So whatever monies you could feel in your heart of hearts to give me for helping you out, I would certainly appreciate it. And he said, it's so funny. He said, the more the way it works out, the more problems my constituents have, the more money I get. He said, so it's a crazy world. And so when you came to me with your problem, I immediately thought of Congressman DeLay, and I thought, well, this is what Coach Garrett ought to do, just write a congressional. And now, to finish this story, after you got your action completed from Strom Thurmond, did you not get another letter in a couple of weeks saying,
yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Mr. Garrett, thank you so much. And oh, by the way, can you donate anything to me? Did you get that?
Yes, sir.
See, that's the way it works. And if you don't know that's the way it works, it amazes you. And it's just it's a crazy, crazy way to do business, isn't it?
Right, it is.
But I'll validate that story as long as the day is long.
LaMills, I would say you have to have people that know the system, and to say to have friends in high places. The man up here to my left, in the top corner there, definitely is one of those people. That's funny. It's a minute. Now, General Cole, I wanted to interject because there are a couple of things that first I want to ask of you or say to you, and then I want to wrap and kind of put the bow on it for LaMills here. The degrees of separation, honestly, that you and I have and my family, it may be an Air Force thing, but I understand that you completed your B-52 training at Castle Air Force Base in California.
Correct.
Okay, so my family, we were stationed at Castle. We had 2 tours there. We were actually stationed there twice, so know the Merced, Atwater, know that area quite well.
Oh, yeah.
And from what I understand, I'm going to read the notes here. In '82, you were assigned as the Assistant Deputy Commander of Operations of the 379th Bombardment Wing at Wordsmith Air Force Base in Michigan.
That's right.
That's where I was born.
I didn't know where Wordsmith was, and I asked the personnel guy, "Where's Wordsmith?" And he said, "Well, it's about 100 miles south of Alpena." And I said, "Well, I don't know where Alpena is."
Where's Alpena?
Told me. That worked out to be a good assignment.
That's good stuff. Yeah, so I was born there.
Were you really?
I believe I was. I believe we were there for 6 months of my life, and then my dad was again. He was in Vietnam, so you two kind of have that like-minded together. We talked about that. He was at part there doing part of the Tet Offensive while you were flying the AC-47 Spookies. So during that entire conflict, interesting stuff to say the least.
Was a great base, and there was a place called Tony Decker's right outside the base there that sold a hamburger that they called the Mess. And after playing golf or doing whatever you're doing, everybody had to go to Tony Decker's and have a mess. Well, when Tony Decker's burned down, it took them 4 days to put the fire out because it was mostly alcohol. When Tony Decker's burned down, I knew that was going to be curtains for Wordsmith, and sure enough, it was a great base because it was so isolated that nobody had anything to do except fly airplanes. And so when you had an inspection, if you had a no-notice inspection, the IG team would go into the local grocery store to get groceries, and the grocery store would call the command post and said, "Hey, there's some strangers in Air Force uniforms buying groceries here for about a week. Do y'all get an inspection?" And my command post would call me, and I'd initiate the alert roster and the recall roster, and we'd bring everybody in. So we were all sitting at our places ready for them as soon as they walked in the door, and no notice.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. Again, you've got the stories to tell. If you haven't written the book yet, it's time to put pen to paper, sir. It's time to put pen to paper. I will say that. LaMills, let me ask you this. I mean, this has again been another conversation really to dive into not just the candidate, not just a man looking for the office, but again, seeing behind the scenes, right? So again, quality individuals that we've had talking with you and about you as you embark on this new journey. How has this conversation with General Cole really helped you prepare for the next few days, next few weeks, next month, and things of that nature as you're moving forward until November?
I think as much as anything, being able to be exposed to people like General Cole and to have time with them, and frankly, for him to allow me to be a part of his family and coaching his son, spending time with his family in general, has given me the opportunity to understand that, in this world of separation, of angst, of party politics, et cetera, whether it's been in basketball or in the Air Force, we're all on that same team. And I've truly had to understand and practice bringing people together, bringing, the differences of what people bring to the table to allow us to deal with those things in a productive way so that we can all be successful. And General gave the perfect opening with regards to his experience with simply wanting to do right for his kids in terms of them having a positive experience at school. It didn't matter that Bossier was a mostly black school. It didn't matter what the so-called reputation of what people thought of what the school was. It didn't matter that he didn't even live in the district. He had a solution in hand, that he understood his kids' happiness was going to be the priority there. And race didn't stop him from doing that. And so he put his children in a situation whereas they would have these conversations, they would be able to interact with people. Frankly, his son grew up around more black people when he was away from home than he did with white people. And I mean, that's just, and let's be honest, that is a very rare thing to happen.
Yeah.
In our United States of America today, that is a very rare thing to happen. And he did this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about having people to be willing to expose themselves and be willing to put themselves in a situation whereas they're not always the priority or comfortable, this man gave me an idea of what that looked like, of what it meant to immerse yourself in a situation whereas you might be a little bit uncomfortable, people might treat you a little bit different, but focus on the relationship, focus on building solutions, building a team, and you're going to be okay. And I think that's what I bring as a candidate for city council, in that I'm all about bringing about solutions. I'm not here to be one party or the other. I'm not here to push any agenda. It's about, let's figure out how are we as a city, as a team, going to make this thing be successful. And so I'm so glad to have people like General Cole that have been in my life, and the stories along with it. And frankly, if he didn't give me the input around the congressional, I would have never been here. I probably would have, finished up 20, 30 years or something like that, or who knows what. And so yeah, so that's what I think. Yeah.
That's a good lesson. And it's not like, General Cole doesn't have a incredibly look, the who's who in the family. When I was doing my research and making sure that I was aware, I was saying I did a look up, and I saw General George Peyton Cole, and it said born in 1919. And I thought, well, okay, but that I'm not sure if that's going to be the right person that we're talking to, but it would be pretty cool. Then I realized that was senior, and here we have junior. But you're both retired at the same rank of Brigadier General, and that's just got to be pressure for your son, who's on the same trajectory, right? How do you follow that up, right? When you got granddad and dad, Brigadier General, you can't stop at Colonel. So George the third, you can't stop there.
Well, I'll tell you what. My dad was born in New Orleans, and during the Depression, he made money. Their house was a little off St. Charles. He made money walking over to the French Quarter and playing his trumpet on a corner. And he made, as a matter of fact, he made more money than his brother and his father did, both of them working other jobs. He'd bring home more money at the end of the day playing his trumpet. So Dad, when World War II started, he was going to Texas A&M. He was a senior. His whole class on Monday morning marched over from Bryan, Texas to College Station, or from College Station to Bryan, Texas. And his whole class entered the Army, and he went through pilot training without being a commission, not having a commission. He got his commission when he got his wings, and he still hadn't gotten his diploma. And after the war, when everybody was getting out and getting their diplomas, his friends told him, stay in and make rank. So my father never went back to A&M and got his diploma. But I'll tell you what, he made Brigadier, and he had a magnificent mind for logistics. And if you go down to Texas A&M, and all his life, when you'd ask him what was his college, he'd say Texas A&M. And if you go down to Texas A&M today, they've got a big wall of honor there, where every A&M graduate that made general officer or admiral rank, his name is on that wall. You'll see the name of Brigadier General George P. Cole on that wall. And so he always,
you can't beat that.
And they always claimed him for the rest of his life.
That is all right. That's a good story. That's a great story. Sir, thank you very much for your time. Above that, thank you for your service. Mr. Garrett, same as you. Thank you for your service. I don't think that is said enough, but in true heartfelt, I want to say that. We thank you for your time having this conversation with us as we move towards Election Day, November 3rd. we will be going to the polls all across the nation, right? Making choices, making new decisions, going in directions. So, Mr. Garrett, we believe that you are well suited, sir. And when you got folks like General George Peyton Cole in your corner, you might do okay.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Look
Best
forward
of luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.